Okay, so here is two arguments for why the cause must be personal and also why it must be timeless, spaceless, immaterial, and powerful. Keep in mind, by the way, that at this point in the argument, if we're assuming at this point in the argument that all the arguments for the kalam are sound up to this point, the causal premise, the philosophical arguments, and the scientific evidence for the second premise, if we're assuming the soundness of all of that, then this is what follows from that. The first argument would be this here. Craig gives the first argument here. He says, when it comes to explanations, there's scientific, physical explanation, and personal explanations. And the example is this: suppose you, I believe it is, you see there's a pot of tea boiling in the kitchen and everything, and the person asks his mom or whatever, why is the pot boiling? Now, what can she say? You can either give the scientific explanation, oh, well, the temperature went up to such and such, and it caused the water to start boiling and all that stuff, or that's the scientific explanation. Or you can give the personal explanation or say, oh, because I decided to make tea for you. Both are fully legitimate explanations. One is physical, scientific. The other is the the non-personal explanation. The other is the personal explanation. Now, if we're granting the two premises, like specifically premise 2, that the universe began to exist, then that means there can't be a scientific, a non-personal explanation, and all we're left with is a personal explanation. Now, again, if you want to say that there has to be some physical explanation, like a quantum vacuum or something, you would be denying the second premise and saying that the universe didn't, because you'd have to posit something physical before that, in which case the universe didn't begin to exist. That would have to be eternal itself, or that would have to have a cause too. But remember, if the second premise is sound, the arguments against the infinity and whatnot, then we're back to arguing the second premise here. But if you assume the premises are sound, that argument holds. The second argument would be that, but via the other, or I suppose let me backtrack for a second here. The cause would have to be immaterial, since it created the material world. It'd have to be spaceless, since it created space. It'd have to be timeless, since it created time. Okay, now on to the second argument as to why it must be personal. With those properties, timelessness, spacelessness, immaterial, there are only two types of candidates in philosophy that fit that description, as Craig points out. Either abstract objects, like numbers, or an unembodied mind. Abstract objects can't cause anything, so it can't be abstract objects, so that leaves only an unembodied mind as an explanation, which of course would be personal. Now, again, you're free to argue why that maybe you could always say, well, an unembodied mind is incoherent or whatnot, but that would, of course, and we can discuss that if you want to, but that is an argument for why the cause must be personal. So, yeah, those are two arguments for why the cause must be personal.